In Lesson 8, we're going to learn how to solve quadratic equations by factoring. We had this factoring method where you put the numbers in parentheses on our quiz on Monday. So we're going to use that in order to find you can call it solving the equation, or it's also called finding the roots. You can hear it. It can be said either way. It'll say either find the roots of the equation or solve the equation. So for this first one, if it says solve the equation for x squared minus 18 equals 3x, we are going to find the roots of this equation. Well, first of all, we want to set everything on one side of the equation and have only 0 on this side. And here's how you do that. So in order to have 0 over here, we're going to have to subtract a 3x. And if we subtract a 3x from this side, we need to subtract a 3x from this side. So over here we get x squared minus 18 minus 3x equals 0. Now we're going to need to rewrite this so that it's in our standard form. And what I mean by that is we want to put this x before the negative 18. So we're going to rewrite it x squared minus 3x minus 18 equals 0. Now here we just factor this side of the equation like we've done so many times. So what we need to do is we put an x in each of these. We look at this last number. We think of two numbers when multiplied by together will give us negative 18. And when those same two numbers are added together, they equal negative 3. Well, we can see that that would be negative 6 and 3. Sorry, that's pretty hard to read. Because when you multiply negative 6 times 3, you get negative 18. But when you add 3 plus negative 6, you get negative 3. So this would be x plus 3. And then this one would equal x minus 6. And I know all of you have done this before, and you understand that part. So now the next part of it is we need to figure out what does x equal. Well, the reason why we wanted to factor it to this point is when there are two numbers multiplied by each other, or by each other, and if those two numbers are multiplied by each other and they equal 0, then we know that either this has to be 0 or this one has to be 0 to make this statement true. Because the only way you can get something equal to 0 when you're multiplying is if you multiply it by 0. So we're going to look at this section right here, x plus 3. If we have x plus 3 and we want that to equal 0, x plus 3 equals 0, what does x need to be? Well, in this case, x would have to be negative 3 in order for that to be 0. So one of the answers to this equation is negative 3. And we'll put that right here. You'll find when we are solving quadratic equations where the x is squared, then you have more than one answer. Because this could equal 0, but this could also equal 0. So right here, we have x minus 6. And we want to set that equal to 0. We say to ourselves, what does x need to be for this equation to be 0, or to be true? In this one, x would need to be 6, because 6 minus 6 is 0. So we have negative 3 and 6. So both of those are answers to this problem. And we can make sure that those are correct by going back to the original problem and checking it. So if we go back to our original problem, which said x squared minus 18 equals 3x, we're going to check our answer. First, we're going to put in a negative 3 in for x. Negative 3 squared would be 9. 9 minus 18 is negative 9. And on this side, 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. The equals, so that's correct. Let's put in a 6. 6 squared would be 36 minus 18. 36 minus 18 is 18. And 3 times 6 is also 18. So both of our answers work. So the answer when you solve this quadratic equation and find the roots of it is negative 3 and 6. We're going to try another one to make sure that you know how to do that. We're going to say, here's another question that they could ask. They could say, find the values of x that satisfy this equation. x minus 56 equals negative x squared. They want to know what values of x would make this equation true. We're solving it, we're finding the roots. So the first step is to move everything to one side of the equation and leaving only 0 on this side. So we're going to need to add a positive x squared to each side in order to make this side 0. And then we're going to want to rewrite this side in the correct form. So we have x squared plus x minus 56 equals 0. First thing then we do is we go ahead and set our parentheses. And we're looking for two numbers when multiplied together equal negative 56 and when added together equal a positive 1 because the coefficient in front of that x is a 1. So we're going to do plus 8. Well, first we put our x's in. Positive 8 minus 7. 8 times negative 7 equals negative 56, but positive 8 plus a negative 7 equals 1. When we get to this form, or this part, we're going to think to ourselves again, one of these has to equal 0. Both of them can for this answer to be 0. So we're going to find what number here makes this part equal 0 and what number here makes this part equal 0. Well, negative 8 plus 8 equals 0, so this x equals negative 8. 7 minus 7 equals 0, so this x is 7. So our answers to this equation is negative 8 and 7. Our original equation, before we started moving things around, was x minus 56 equals negative x squared. Let's try it with a negative 8. Negative 8 minus 56 is a negative 64. Negative 8 squared is 64, and we put the negative sign in front of it, equals negative 64. So 8 works. And we're going to check with the 7. 7 minus 56 equals negative 49. And 7 squared is 49. Put the negative sign in front of that. That equals negative 49. So both the 8 and the 7 work. There's one more that I want to show you so that you don't get confused when you see it in your homework assignment. This is when there is a coefficient, that's just the word that means the number, in front of the first variable. That makes things just a bit different. So we want to solve the equation 3x squared minus 6x equals 9. We're going to find all the values of x that make this equation true. The first thing we're going to do is to make this side 0. So we're going to subtract 9 from each side, which gives us 3x squared minus 6x minus 9 equals 0. When we were doing our factoring, though, we remember that we cannot have a coefficient in front of x squared. We cannot have a number here for us to use our parentheses. So first thing we need to do is we need to divide this number, 3, from each term. We're going to do the opposite of the distributive property. We're going to divide 3 from 3x squared, which would give us just x squared. Negative 6x divided by 3 is minus 2x. Remember, we can visualize it like this. Negative 6x divided by 3. That gives us a negative 2x. Now we have negative 9, and we're going to divide that by 3, which gives us a negative 3. And that still is all set to 0. We keep our 3. We can't just get rid of it. But now we can do the parentheses factoring, the factoring by parentheses with this number right here, x squared minus 2x minus 3. So next to the 3, because it's going to get multiplied by that, we put our parentheses. Now we're thinking, after we put our x's in, we're thinking of two numbers when multiplied together equals negative 3 and when added together equals negative 2. So that would be positive 1 and negative 3. Because 1 times negative 3 equals negative 3, but 1 plus a negative 3 equals negative 2. Remember to always watch those signs. Now we end by doing the same thing. We don't have to worry about the 3, but we're going to take a look at this. This x plus 1 has to equal 0 for this whole thing to equal 0. So what number would make this part equal 0? It would be negative 1. So one of our first answer is negative 1. Now we're looking at this section right here. We're thinking of x minus 3 equals 0. We're thinking of what number would make this equal 0. Well, x would have to be 3 in order for that to equal 0. So the answers to this equation is -1 and 3. We always want to go back and check it. -1 squared is 1, and 1 times 3 is 3. 3 minus 6 times -1 is -6. So we have 3 minus a -6, and that does equal 9. Let's try the 3. 3 times 3 squared, which would be 27, and 27 minus 6 times 3 is 18. So we have 27 minus 18, and that also equals 9. So this answer is correct.